Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena, this is Lena's Bookshelf, and today we're going to do my June wrap up. And I was actually doing a team challenge for the Facebook book club that I'm a part of. I'm actually a team leader. So I did a team challenge and it was a board game, and so a lot of it was based on chance. So I didn't have a whole lot of say in what I was reading this month. So we're just gonna dive into it, talk about what I liked and what I didn't like, and I don't know why I explain these every time. You guys know what a wrap-up is. I need to stop doing that. Okay, the first book I read was Under Her Care by Lucinda Berry, and this actually came out this month. And I have now read all of Lucinda Berry's books, and I did a video ranking all of her books from my favorite to my least favorite, and I will link that up in the cards and also down below, so you can go ahead and check that out and see some more thoughts on this and all the other Lucinda Berry books. But basically, you're following a detective who's trying to solve a case. A woman was murdered, and the only suspect that they have is a teenage boy with autism. So he calls in a autism specialist to help them unravel what happened and who's responsible for this murder. And I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It had very much like small town, everybody's in each other's business type of vibes. While I enjoyed the twist, it wasn't anything particularly shocking. The next book I read was A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins, and I love this cover. I think this is one of the most gorgeous book covers I've ever seen, and I'm so sad about it because I gave this book 2 stars. And the only reason I gave it 2 stars is because books I give 1 star to are books that truly made me angry. And this book didn't make me angry because it was so boring. Nothing happened the whole book. Somebody disappears and they all live on houseboats, and this was the second book I read, and it hasn't even been a full month since I read this, and I already couldn't tell you anything about the book. I don't remember anything. I read this physically, but then I also had the audiobook on Libby, so I was able to kind of go back and forth, and I read this in a day, and I just wanted it to be over. I just kept going so it would end. Like, I honestly couldn't really tell you. So the only reason I rated it 2 stars is because it didn't make me angry. Frankly, because there wasn't enough in there for me to remember to actually make me angry. So yeah, but I might keep it because the cover is so pretty. You're so pretty, but you were so boring. The next book I read was Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney, and I actually borrowed this copy from my friend Jackie. I'll link Jacqueline's channel below, and she has been telling me to read this for a long time. I've had this recommended to me by a lot of people, but I was really hesitant to read this one because J.P. Delaney, I have given both of the other books I've read by J.P. Delaney 1 star. So I was like, nope, I'm not going to pick up another J.P. Delaney. I'm not going to do it. His male characters are the most awful, misogynistic, just horrible male characters I think I've ever read about. But Jackie told me that this one's different. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It was fine. Basically, the premise is this man and his wife have a toddler, and they get a knock on the door one day saying that their son was actually switched at birth with this other couple's son. And so they have to figure out, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna switch them back? Are we gonna co-parent? And everybody said that this is like a moral dilemma, but I don't really see any moral dilemma because the decision was always made for them. Like, if you've read this book, then you know there really wasn't any question because one of the parties already had decided in their mind what was gonna happen. So they thought it was a moral dilemma, but it was already decided for them. They didn't actually make any decisions. I don't know, maybe that's a spoiler. I don't know. It was fine, it was forgettable, and I probably won't pick up another J.P. Delaney. The next book I read was In With the Devil by James Keane, and this is a true crime story about a man who was sentenced to prison for something pretty arduous. I don't really remember what it was. It wasn't anything like super serious, but he was sentenced to prison for like a couple of years, and basically he is approached by law enforcement, and he basically is approached and told that they would give him a lesser sentence if he would kind of do some recon for him. So there was this man in the criminally insane unit that they are pretty sure murdered a lot of women, but they only have proof of like 1 or 2. And so they wanted this gentleman to go into the criminally insane unit and befriend this other man to try and get him to tell him any secrets about the murders, so to see if they can find the bodies or if they can get any information that links him to the murders. And it was just very history heavy. It was very fact heavy. I wanted a lot more of what actually happened and a retelling of their actual interactions, and a lot less everything that was going on in the world. You know, if I wanted to read a book about the justice system, I would have read a book about the justice system. I thought it was going to be like a retelling of his conversations with this murderer. And it was boring. By the end, I just wanted it to be done. But like I said, very fact heavy, very dry. It almost read like a textbook. So 2 stars. Okay, sorry if the angle is different. I got a phone call. So the next book I read was We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz. And this book is about 2 women that go on trips together every year. They're in their like late 20s, and they went on a trip, an international trip, and something happened. One of them got attacked. They ended up killing him. And now a year later, they're taking a similar trip to a different place, and the same thing is happening again. So this girl is trying to figure out, okay, why are all of these mysterious deaths following my friend? And and none of that is a spoiler, because all of that is in the synopsis. So this was fast paced. It kept moving. It had a pretty satisfying ending. I was pretty satisfied with how it ended. But what I didn't like about this book was that these girls were so immature. The author wrote them very immature. It almost felt like a YA novel. Yeah, that was mainly the thing that bothered me. I just felt like, you know, these are not things that a 28-year-old would do. It was fine. It was nothing spectacular, nothing that I would tell everybody, oh my gosh, you need to read this, but it was a fine ride. The next book I read was Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. So this is about a man who goes on this like horseback riding, camping, hiking excursion in Utah with his friends, and he gets there and he realizes that the woman who leads these trail tours is actually his former love from when he was a teenager. So this is definitely a second chance love story. And I knew that going into it. And so I tried very hard to not base my rating based on the fact that I know I don't like that trope, if that makes sense. I tried to separate the fact that I dislike that trope from the story and just look at the story objectively. I liked the character portrayal. There was kind of, you know, in that kind of group wilderness setting, they kind of had every different type of personality. You know, there's the know-it-all, there's the nice guy, there's the annoying pervy guy. You know, they just kind of, it was very predictable. I mean, romances in general are predictable, right? That's why we love them, because we kind of know what to expect. I know I need to take it with a grain of salt because Christina Lauren, they are romance authors and not thriller authors, but they need to stick to what they're good at, which is romance, and not try to write, you know, killing scenes. But overall, it was a fun ride. I enjoyed the atmospheric aspect of it. I definitely felt like I was on the trail with them. I definitely feel like I could envision the mountains of Utah. And definitely go check out Talk Bookish to Me podcast, because Gwen just did a episode talking about this. So if you want to go even more in depth in this story, definitely check that out. The next book I read was The Liar's Wife by Kirsten Modlin. And I read this because Gwen gave it 5 stars. And even though Gwen and I don't always have similar reading tastes, I was intrigued by this one. And I know that Kirsten Modlin is a pretty quick ride. I know that it's going to be a quick read that I'll be able to get through in a couple of hours, and it'll be thrilling and it'll be salacious, and that's definitely what this was. So this woman is basically going back to work after she's had her baby, and her husband decides to stay home with the baby. And then she starts noticing that he's doing some sketchy stuff. He's taking the baby out at weird times. He's buying things he doesn't usually buy, buying 2 meals for people. And so she thinks he's cheating on her. And so she starts following him to figure out what's happening. The twist was fun. It was a fun ride. It was a fun ending. Again, this is not something that is going to stick with me long term. It was just kind of like a roller coaster. It's fun while it lasts, but it's not something that you think about. You just kind of move on to the next roller coaster. The next book I read was At the Water's Edge by Sarah Gruen, and this one was kind of a disappointment. I rated it 3 stars, but basically you're following this woman. She and her husband have been basically turned out and disowned by her family. And so in order to get back in her father's good graces, they decide to take a boat from America to Scotland to look for the Loch Ness Monster. And it was just, I felt really bad for this woman. Her husband was kind of a doucher. Nobody really took her seriously, and she felt like she had to do all of these things. Like, she felt like she couldn't go a day without doing her hair because her husband would like say something about it. Her husband would comment on her weight. Her husband's friend would flirt with her all the time and be like really inappropriate. I just felt like this girl was, everybody was just so mean and horrible to her. She had no say in anything, and she was basically just, you know, brought along on this wild goose chase looking for this mythical creature. And then the ending was just like, what happened? It's very strange, and I was so sad because I loved Water for Elephants that Sarah Gruen also wrote, but this was a disappointment. Next we have Fight Club, and this was actually a reread for me, and I read Fight Club long time ago, and I thought it kind of went over my head, and so I wanted to reread it, and it kind of went over my head again. I think I have a hard time separating what's satire from what is supposed to be serious. And I feel like a lot of this is supposed to be satire, but I don't know. It's very strange. If you know Chuck Palahniuk, you know it's weird. You're gonna be in for a weird time. It's weird. It's a lot of really inappropriate words that I'm not even sure what they mean, and I'm kind of afraid to look up. No, I've enjoyed other Chuck Palahniuk books much more than this one, and even though it has a very different ending from the movie, I think the movie is better. I think that's probably the first time I've ever said that. The movie is better though. Next up, we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulic, something like that. And this is about a nanny who is taking care of this little boy who starts drawing these sketchy pictures. And I liked this because the whole time you're not sure if she's an unreliable narrator or not. And I liked the nanny vibes. I was a nanny when I was in college during the summers. I nannied 2 lovely little children, so I always enjoy reading things that have a nanny in them. And this is if you liked Turn of the Key, you might like this. You know, the nanny vibes, the creepy kids, and you have to kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit. The ending was a little bit messy, a little bit confusing, and I don't know, I wasn't satisfied with the way it ended. Even though it tried to tie up the ending in a bow, it really didn't. But this is definitely, I love this copy of this book. I love this cover. I love the spine. I love the red. And it has pictures in it. So you have like the drawings that the little boy did. And this book, it's a little bit paranormal. It's a little bit thrilling. I was expecting more horrific elements. People were describing this as horror, but I didn't really get that. And people were saying that this writing style is similar to Stephen King. I don't know where anybody got that from. Do people just equate any male thriller writer to Stephen King? I don't know. The writing style was much closer to Riley Sager than to Stephen King. The next book I read was Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult, and when I finished this, I initially gave it 3 stars, but after thinking about it, I might lower it to 2.5, which is the lowest rating I've ever given a Jodi Picoult book. I now have read all but like 2 or 3 of her books, and it didn't have a moral dilemma, it didn't have courtroom, it was more women's fiction, it was about COVID, which was fine, that didn't trigger me or anything. But this woman basically goes to the Galapagos, and she thinks that her boyfriend's going to propose to her. And then COVID hits, and he works at a hospital, so he ends up having to stay and work at the hospital. And he says, just go to the Galapagos by yourself, stay away from this, that way you won't get sick, I'll be at work anyways, it'll be 2 weeks, and then everything will be fine, and you can come back and everything will go back to normal. And then she gets stuck in the Galapagos. And the twist in this, when I got to the twist and I realized what was happening, I was like, oh my gosh, I just wasted like 5 hours of my life. And then I had another like 4 hours until the book was done. And the girl in the main character was a brat. Usually Jodi's main characters are these like smart, driven go-getters. This woman was a brat. She was so mean to her boyfriend who was just trying to help her. And like little things, like she says, like one day her boyfriend brings home ice cream and he says, I brought you ice cream, it's your favorite. And she like thinks to herself, no, you just think it's my favorite because I let you think that it's actually your favorite. And I'm like, okay, but when you first met and we're talking about ice cream, why didn't you just tell him what your favorite really was? Like, why do you have to pretend like your favorite is his favorite? That's not creating a meaningful relationship. That's just a lie. Like, just tell him. Why does it matter? if you don't have the same taste in ice cream, that doesn't mean that you're not compatible. I don't know. Rant over. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Jody. I hope Jody's next book redeems this one, because this is probably the worst one I've read. The next book I read was Tampa by Alyssa Nutting. This book was recommended to me by Kat from Kat Chats. I got to meet her this past month. I met up with her and Jackie and Jesse, and we went to a winery and we did wine tastings. It was so fun. I'll link my vlog up in the cards and down below. But she was telling us about this book, and this book follows a female who has pedophilia. So I've read books that have a male that suffers from pedophilia, but I've never read a book from a woman's perspective who struggles with pedophilia. Okay. So many phone calls right now. As soon as I sit down to film, nobody's called me all day. And then now that I'm filming, I get all the phone calls. Anyways, this woman has a fetish for teenage boys, and she is actually a middle school teacher. So this was unlike anything I've ever read before. I did have to kind of skim the underage encounters a little bit. It was one of those things where I was like, this is absolutely disgusting. Why can't I stop reading? It was so interesting to be inside her head and to kind of hear her thoughts. The reason I gave it 3 stars was because a lot of the time that I was reading it, my face was like it was a little too much, a little too graphic. And then also I wanted more of her backstory. I wanted to know why she is the way she is, but it was a wild ride. It was wild. Definitely go into this knowing that there is some pretty graphic stuff about teenage boys. So if you have a son, particularly teenage son, definitely look up some trigger warnings. This might be a little bit much for you. So yeah, definitely look into this book before you read it. But I'm happy I read it. It was interesting. It was wild, and I liked the writing style, so I think I would pick up another Alyssa Nutting book. Okay, the last book I read was Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough, and this book I gave 1 star. I couldn't even tell you what happened. This book was so boring. The entire book could have been 60 pages. This woman, she's about to turn 40, and when her mom turned 40, she went crazy, and now she's starting to show some of the same psychotic things that her mother was showing, plus she has insomnia, and it's basically 200 plus pages of like, did I kill him? I don't know what I did. I need to sleep. I haven't slept and now I'm seeing things. Did this person kill him? I wasn't there. Was I there? I'm not there on the TV footage. Maybe I did kill this person. Maybe I hurt this person. Maybe this person hurt me. Maybe I don't actually know. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was just so done with the characters. And I had to finish it because I needed it for a point for the game. And then the ending happened and everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's ending. And I was like, what? Behind Her Eyes, I gave like 3 stars. It was fine. But this was just like, I was reading reviews and I was like, did I read a different book? What am I missing here? So if I'm missing something, somebody needs to talk to me about this book, because it obviously went over my head. I'm obviously not smart enough for this book. And she spent the entire book talking about what her mom went through. And I'm like, I want to know about you. What are you doing to help yourself? What are you doing? Okay, so that was all of the books that I read in June. So, I mean, I had a lot of just, nice, fun books that I'm glad I read, but aren't all-time favorites. So a lot of 3 stars, but overall, not too shabby. Make sure you check out my July TBR to see all the fun things that I'm reading in July. I have a lot of buddy reads planned and a lot of reading vlogs planned. Let me know what was the best book that you read in the month of June. Let me know down below how you think I did with my reading, or if you agree with some of my ratings, or if you disagree. I feel like some people might disagree on Insomnia, but that's part of the great thing about books, right? We all have different opinions. We all see books and we all take what we want from them. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.